If someone had told me that one day I would be humiliated in front of my family for something I didn't do, I would have laughed. I was always the one who avoided conflict, who went unnoticed in the corners of the room, setting the dinner table while the others laughed. I never wanted to be the center of attention, but that night, all eyes were on me, and none of them were filled with compassion. My name is Carolina. I am 32 years old, a literature teacher, and have been married to Eduardo for 6 years. Until a few months ago, my life was peaceful. Not rich, not perfect, but peaceful. Edu and I live in a simple but cozy apartment in Campinas. He works as a logistics manager for a transportation company and has always been a fair, sensible man, or at least that's what I thought. His family always looked at me with a certain veiled contempt. Nothing direct, of course, the kind of thing that hides between the lines. The mother-in-law who praises her son's ex-girlfriend's cooking, the brother-in-law who always asks if you're still just teaching, as if it were a childish hobby. But no, absolutely no one was as poisonous to me as my sister-in-law, Marcella. Marcella is the kind of woman who seems to have been designed to be admired. Successful, well-groomed, with perfectly aligned teeth and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She worked as an interior designer, dressed as if she were going to a Vogue photo shoot, and spoke as if everything around her was beneath her. From the beginning, I felt that there was something about her that didn't add up. A disguised smirk when something went wrong with me. A quick glance at her husband when I spoke, as if to say, "See how ridiculous she is?" But I put up with it. I swallowed it. Because it was Eduardo's family. Because, as much as it hurt, I wanted to belong. Everything changed on my mother-in-law's birthday. Dona Helena was turning 70, and the party was to be held in the ballroom of a fancy condominium where Marcella lived. I had spent the entire week helping with the preparations, even though I worked all day. I arrived early on Saturday, arranged the tables, folded the napkins, and set up centerpieces with flowers bought at Sisa. No one noticed, no one commented. And, honestly, I didn't expect them to. But I did expect respect. The party started off lively. Live music, Italian food, wine flowing at the tables. And that's when it all fell apart. In the middle of the room, in front of everyone, Marcella stood up with a glass in her hand and said, "Everyone, I tried to avoid this, but I can't pretend anymore. Someone broke into my closet last night and took one of my diamond earrings, and the only person who was there was Carolina." A silence fell over the room. The waiter passing by with the glasses stopped. The musician playing the guitar froze. My breath caught in my throat. I laughed. At first, I laughed. I thought it was a bad joke. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw the malice. That accusation wasn't just an attack. It was a plan. "Are you saying that I stole it from you?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. I left the door ajar to get some decorative pillows. When I came back, my earring was gone. No one else went up to that floor. My mother-in-law's eyes widened. My brother-in-law crossed his arms, and my husband remained silent. And there, in the middle of that party, I was branded. A thief, an intruder, a disgrace to the family. Even without proof, even without a chance to defend myself. But what no one knew was that days earlier, something had alerted me. A detail as small as a hidden camera. One that I had bought out of paranoia after a series of things disappeared from my own apartment. One that, luckily, was recording when I went into her room. And it was that video, that damn blessed video, that would change everything. The party continued around me as if time had frozen. People were still talking, toasting, laughing. But everything seemed distant, muffled, as if I were trapped inside a fishbowl. Only Marcella's frozen gaze kept me anchored in that absurd reality. "You're joking, right?" I managed to whisper. "Joking? Who jokes about theft, Carolina? I know what I saw, I know what's missing, and I know who was there. You went up to my room." My mind began to spin in slow motion. Yes, I had gone up there, but not alone. Marcella herself had asked me to help her carry some boxes of party favors that were in the guest room next to her closet. I carried 2 boxes, went into the room, and left. I was in there for less than 3 minutes, but now she was using that against me. "That doesn't make sense. You asked me to go there yourself," I said, already feeling my face burn, not with shame, but with contained anger. Marcella sighed dramatically, and that's when she played the card that turned everything into a spectacle. She took the earring out of her pocket, wrapped in a paper napkin. "And do you know where I found this?" she said loudly, theatrically, turning to the guests. "In the guest bathroom, under the face towel. Who do you think put it there?" A murmur swept through the party. My mother-in-law shook her head. My father-in-law lowered his eyes. And Eduardo. Eduardo didn't say a word. He just looked at me. That warm, apathetic look, almost complicit in the humiliation. And at that moment I realized he believed her. "Say something," I demanded, trying not to shout. He blinked slowly, as if the words weighed too heavily. "Carolina, you were there. It's strange, yes." It was as if someone had punched me in the stomach. The man I slept with whom I shared my life, was hesitant, weighing me up, questioning my character, because of a cheap act put on by someone who had always hated me. I felt my legs wobble. I needed to sit down, breathe, get out of there. But I couldn't, because running away would be admitting guilt that wasn't mine. My voice came out shaky but firm. "You set this up." Marcella widened her eyes in fake surprise. "Oh, so now I'm the liar? And you're the innocent one? You of all people who isn't even real family?" And that's when the blood rushed to my head. The entire room fell silent. The waiter dropped a glass on the floor. The singer stopped pretending to tune his guitar. "What did you say?" I asked, staring at her. "You heard me. You came here because of Eduardo. You're not a daughter, or a sister, or a granddaughter. You're an intruder. And now, besides being an intruder, you're a thief." I felt naked. They stripped me of my dignity right there, in front of everyone. It was as if all the years I had tried to belong to that family had been erased by one poisonous sentence from a frustrated and petty woman. My mother-in-law remained seated, silent. My father-in-law clutched his whiskey glass as if he were going to crush it, and Eduardo looked away, as if I were an inconvenient social problem he needed to deal with in private. I swallowed hard. "You want to accuse me? Go ahead. But remember this when you see what I have to show you." Marcella crossed her arms. "Don't try to defend yourself with lies, Carolina. It's past time for you to leave this family." She did it. The party turned into a courtroom. And I was the defendant. I went home early, my face burning with shame, but my eyes burning with something else. Determination. That night, I lay on the couch and couldn't sleep. The video I had recorded without meaning to, out of instinct, was saved on my laptop. And when I saw what it showed, I realized that I could not only clear my name, I could destroy hers. In the days that followed that night, my life became a minefield. I woke up with my eyes swollen, not just from crying, but from disbelief. It was as if everything had happened in a badly finished nightmare. But it wasn't. Every notification I ignored on my phone, every silence from Eduardo, every group message without my participation reminded me, "You've been thrown to the lions, and no one tried to pull you back." The family WhatsApp group, where I used to exchange recipes with my mother-in-law and jokes with my brother-in-law, went cold. No one mentioned what had happened, neither to defend him nor to clarify. It was as if everyone had agreed on a pact of silence, and that silence was deafening. I tried to talk to Eduardo, but every time I brought it up, he deflected. "Let's wait for things to cool down. There's no point in bringing it up again. It's over." But it wasn't over. How could it be over when I was being called a thief behind my back? A friend called me in tears, asking if it was true what she had heard from her sister, who knew Marcella. The rumor was already spreading outside the family. I was the problematic sister-in-law, the one who stole an earring and didn't admit it. At work, I became the target of gossip. They didn't know exactly what happened, but they knew that something had happened. And in those days, it only takes a few words to destroy reputations built over years of effort. And Eduardo, he started to drift away. He started going out more, responding less, locking himself in his room with his cell phone, saying he was working, when in fact he was just avoiding me. One night, while washing the dishes, I heard him on the phone in the hallway. I didn't hear what he said, just the end. "She's not the same anymore." Of course she wasn't. After being betrayed by his family and abandoned by him, who would she be? But still, I didn't give up. Because I knew what I had. I knew what that camera had captured. The video was there, saved in the cloud and password protected. A video of exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds. It showed the truth. It showed who really went into Marcella's closet. And no, it wasn't me. In the video, you could clearly see the housekeeper Letitia entering the room with the vacuum cleaner, leaving the door open. Soon after, Marcella appears. Yes, herself, unaware of the hidden camera on top of the wardrobe, rummages through the closet drawer, takes out the earring, looks at it, and puts it in her own robe pocket. Then she leaves, smiling. I appear in the video about 2 minutes later, with 2 boxes in my hands, walking straight past the closet and going straight to the guest room. The time, everything was there. And more than that, the staging. It was there, watching that scene over and over again, that something changed in me. Before, I just wanted to prove my innocence. Now, I wanted something more. Justice. Because it wasn't enough to show that video. It wasn't enough to rub the truth in the faces of those who chose to believe the lie. I needed to go further. To make everyone feel, especially Marcella, what it's like to be discredited, belittled, tarnished. But first, I needed to mourn. Yes, mourn, because a part of me died that night. The part that believed in people's good faith. That thought love was enough. That family was synonymous with protection. I went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and started writing. I made notes, lists, schedules, a plan. If she wanted to turn my pain into a spectacle, then now I would turn the truth into a bomb. And when it exploded, no one in that family would come out unscathed. It took a while. I didn't get up the next day or the next week. The mourning of trust takes time to pass, and when it does, it leaves deep scars. But little by little, that defeated version of myself began to dissolve. I started getting up earlier. I started boiling coffee again, even though I had no appetite. I resumed my class routine, even with a throbbing pain in the back of my soul. And most importantly, I started observing again. Carefully, silently, strategically. Marcella made me her target. But she forgot that even targets can become shooters when they understand the range of their own strength. The first thing I did was save copies of the video in several places, on a hidden USB stick, in the cloud, and I even sent it to a trusted friend with a clear message. If anything happens to me, show this to them. It wasn't paranoia. It was caution. I knew what Marcella was capable of. And now, I was sure there was something bigger behind that charade. I started gathering information about her. I scoured old social media accounts, found comments from clients dissatisfied with her work as an architect, public notes on professional review sites, and most importantly, I discovered, through a random comment from a former employee at the office where she worked, that Marcella had done something similar before, with another colleague, in a different context. But the pattern was the same. Accuse to eliminate. With that, I knew that my revenge couldn't just be an emotional response. It had to be strategic, meticulous, and definitive. I spent my nights planning. Eduardo was increasingly absent, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of cowardice. I pretended not to notice. I needed him distracted. And it worked. Little by little, I put together a dossier, a complete file with everything that proved it. The video of the trap in the closet. Previous messages from Marcella with malicious comments about me. Some recovered with the help of a friend who was also part of an old family messaging group. Prints of negative reviews of her work. Discreet statements from her colleagues who had witnessed her questionable behavior. And the most powerful piece of evidence, the contract for an overpriced project she had delivered to a client of mine, with mistakes and false documentation. With all this in hand, it was time to take the next step, win over the audience. Yes, because the humiliation I suffered was public, and so would my justice be. But it couldn't happen impulsively. It had to be planned. I started with my mother-in-law. I went to visit her with a bouquet of flowers and a painful smile on my face. I said I wanted to talk. She hesitated, of course, but I left my cell phone on the table with the video ready to play. Watch it. That's all. She pressed play. I didn't say a word. At the end, she was pale. She just said, "My God." I left a flash drive in her hands and left. Just like that. Then I repeated the gesture with my father-in-law. Then with my brother-in-law. One by one. Silently, I began to reconstruct the truth in the shadows, where Marcella couldn't intercept me. And finally, I planned the final blow. Marcella's daughter's engagement party was approaching. It would be the event of the year for the family. An expensive caterer, a photographer, themed decorations, a DJ. All the relatives would be there. all eyes on us, all the masks. And that's when I decided it would be the stage for the revelation. But not just with a video. I wanted more. I wanted to show not only what she had done to me, but who she really was. Her secrets, her hypocrisy, her crimes disguised as charm and class. For that, I would need help. And I called someone she would never imagine, Letitia, her housekeeper, who appeared in the video without knowing it. Letitia was shocked to learn she had been used. She said she knew nothing about it, that Marcella would tell her to clean places without explanation, that she sometimes treated her with contempt, sometimes with false sweetness. I showed her the video. She was silent for a while. Then she took a deep breath and said, "She won't do that to me anymore. Or to you. I'll help." That was all I needed. And at that moment, I knew. Marcella's downfall had already begun. Marcella's daughter's engagement party was the perfect occasion. The kind of event where everyone wants to look flawless, including the hostess. And that's precisely why Marcella was more distracted than ever. While she worried about the arrangement of the silverware and the exact shade of blue of the tablecloths, I was planning something much more subtle and much more lethal. Letitia, now my ally, was essential. She continued to work at Marcella's house, but her attitude had completely changed. Instead of fearing her boss, she now watched her with trained eyes. In a few days, she gave me a list of details that no one would pay attention to, but that would make all the difference. First, she confirmed that Marcella used the same personal laptop to store professional photos and financial data from client projects, and that she rarely backed it up. She left everything there, trusting that nothing would ever happen to her. Second, she revealed that Marcella had recently stored something valuable in one of the office cabinets, something she mentioned with fear, a dossier of former clients, with poorly documented signatures and contracts. It wasn't just about me. It was about fraud, and Marcella was sinking herself with her own hands. All I had to do was dig deep enough. And that's what I did. During the week of the party, I used everything she didn't expect against her. Her pride, her vanity, her haste. Marcella hired a team to broadcast her daughter's engagement live to distant relatives. They placed cameras at strategic points in the hall. And that's where I came in with the cleanest blow I could deliver. "Don't you want me to take care of the technical side of the broadcast? I have some knowledge. I've used this type of equipment at school," I offered, feigning a conciliatory tone during lunch with my mother-in-law. Marcella refused right away, of course. But my mother-in-law, now aware of the truth and beginning to see Marcella in a different light, insisted. She ended up convincing me. "She wants to redeem herself, Marcella. Give her a chance." Marcella, always wanting to appear mature and superior, gave in. And then, with access to the broadcast system and the soundboard in the hall, I had the tool I needed. I set up a video file to play as the live introduction, as if it were a special family vignette. A video with a harmless name, Celebrating Love, edited version. Side, the entire sequence that showed the truth. The video from the closet, with the date, the time, and the image of Marcella hiding her earring. Uncut. No narration, just the pure image of the truth, in high resolution. With a caption at the end. The truth needs no caption, but I didn't want her to find out before the time was right. So I hid the file, disguised the name, and scheduled it to be posted at the right moment, right after the official toast. Meanwhile, I moved other silent pieces. I sent anonymous emails to 3 of Marcella's former clients, discreetly mentioning irregularities in their contracts. No accusations, just suggestions to review the documents and make sure everything is correct. I used a VPN, a new account, nothing traceable. On the same day, I opened a fake review profile on a service platform and reposted the old complaints, adding true details that Letitia had provided me. Information that only someone on the inside would know. She would start to crumble from all sides. From the outside in, and on the day of the party, it would be the final blow. I arrived early, dressed discreetly, as always. I went straight to the technical area. I adjusted the cables and tested the audio. I smiled at the guests. I heard Marcella's snide comments and swallowed them all calmly. Time was on my side now. "Try not to mess up, Carolina. We don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of 80 people, she said mockingly. "Don't worry. Everything will be perfectly synchronized." When the lights went out and her daughter's fiancé raised his glass to toast, I felt a chill run down my spine. Marcella was beaming. She thought she had won, that her insignificant sister-in-law was there, providing technical support like any other employee. And perhaps that was the most delicious part of the scene, seeing how calm she was, inches from the abyss, with no idea that I was about to push her. The countdown on the screen in the booth began. The groom said, "And now, for everyone watching online, a special video made with lots of love." Marcella smiled. The hall fell silent. The images began, and the world finally began to see who she really was. The video began with a gentle transition of flowers, as if it were indeed a romantic tribute. Marcella smiled broadly, thinking it was a tribute to her daughter. A corny montage with photos, perhaps, background music, catchy phrases. It was what she expected. But what came next froze the souls of everyone present. The darkened room, the flickering background lights, the muted ambient sound, and then her image. Her entering the closet, her opening the drawer, her picking up the earring, her smiling, her putting it in her robe pocket. The clear caption, date, 04/11, 5:13 p.m., Mrs. Marcella's closet. There was no music. There was no narration, just the raw image. The video continued. Minutes later, I appeared, with 2 boxes in my hands, walking straight to the next room, without even looking at the closet. The total length of my appearance? 2 minutes and 8 seconds. There wasn't even a moment's hesitation. And then, a final sentence appeared on the screen. The truth doesn't need editing, just courage. The room fell into such a deep silence that you could hear Marcella's nervous breathing. The DJ didn't know what to do. The buffet stopped serving. The waiter knocked over a glass of sparkling wine, and the mother-in-law started crying. Not tears of emotion, but of shame. Marcella stood frozen, her hands clutching her dress, her eyes wide, her face drained of color. She looked at me, and for the first time, she was afraid. She tried to react. "This is a setup. This is fake. This isn't real." But no one answered. People had already judged her, and she was condemned by her own images, without me saying a single word. The bride's, my father-in-law, left the hall in silence. Marcella's daughter, not quite understanding what had just happened, cried with shame. And the guests? Some avoided looking at her. Others simply left, in silence, like people who witness an accident and don't want to get involved. Marcella tried to regain control. "Who did this? Was it you, Carolina? Was it you? You jealous bitch?" She screamed. She yelled. She cursed. But no one answered. My mother-in-law stood up, stopped in front of her, and with tears in her eyes said, "Carolina showed me this video a few days ago. I didn't want to believe it. But now, everyone has seen it. Everyone knows who you are, Marcella." Marcella tried to lunge at me, but was restrained by her own daughter, who begged tearfully, "Mom, please, stop." And then came the worst humiliation of all, not from me, but from Eduardo. Yes, he was there. I hadn't even noticed him until that moment, but he was there, leaning against one of the columns in the hall. He hadn't said a single word since the beginning of the exhibition. When Marcella saw him, she ran to him. "Are you going to let this happen? Are you going to take her side? She sabotaged your niece's engagement. She destroyed everything." Eduardo stared at her with an expression of utter contempt. "You did this to yourself, Marcella. Carolina just showed the truth. She's going to ruin my reputation." He crossed his arms. "You already ruined hers. Now it's just justice." She backed away. She staggered. For the first time, Marcella was alone. Completely alone. No allies, no masks, no control. But I wasn't done yet. Before leaving the hall, I discreetly left a few envelopes on the main table. Inside each one was a copy of the video and a summary of the allegations that were about to be formalized, along with printouts, documents, and testimonies. One was addressed to the company where she worked. Another was for the clients who had been harmed. And the last one was for the family lawyer. Because my revenge would not only be public, it would be legal, formal, inevitable. That night I didn't sleep, but not because of pain. I slept late because I received dozens of messages. From family members, guests, strangers, people apologizing, people asking for copies, people confessing that they always knew something was wrong, but were afraid to take a stand. The truth was finally out. And Marcella began to fall apart. The morning after the party, the city seemed to breathe differently, at least to me. The lightness I felt when I woke up was as strange as it was liberating. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of having to justify myself to anyone. But Marcella didn't have the same privilege. At 9 a.m., I received the first confirmation that my plan was working. A former client of hers, a well-known businesswoman in the region's events industry, published a public note on LinkedIn. After becoming aware of questionable ethical behavior on the part of an architect involved in our project, we have decided to immediately terminate the contract and take the case to the legal department. Seconds later, other messages began to appear on social media. Some were direct, others were more discreet. But her name was there, exposed, circulating in WhatsApp groups, professional discussion forums, and even in communities that report poor service. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected message. The family's lawyer, Mauro, asked to meet with me. We arranged to meet at a discreet cafe. He arrived looking pale, almost embarrassed. Carolina, before anything else, I'm sorry for not believing you, for defending Marcella for so long. Now that I've seen everything, I nodded without responding. I didn't need to apologize anymore. They knew. He handed me a thick envelope. These are the documents that prove she used the family business's name to sign parallel contracts. This could lead to charges of fraud and embezzlement. Your video opened a door that we were honestly afraid to face. I opened the envelope and saw there, in black and white, the end of Marcella's reputation. She had not only destroyed my honor, she had tarnished the name of the entire family to maintain her lifestyle based on appearances and manipulation. The next step was no longer up to me alone. My father-in-law, pressured by the scandal, called a family meeting a few days later. I was invited, yes, invited, and not coerced. I entered their living room as someone who, until recently, was seen as the intruder. Now, I was the only one everyone looked at with respect. Marcella was there, or what was left of her. She sat on the sofa, dejected, without makeup, her eyes red and her hands trembling. Her daughter couldn't even look at her mother. My father-in-law got straight to the point. Marcella, everyone here knows what you did. We're not going to protect you. We're not going to pretend it's normal. Not after what you tried to do to Carolina, and to all of us. Marcella tried to stammer out a defense. She spoke of impulse, pressure, even emotional fragility. But no one bought her story anymore. It was Eduardo who cut her off. You destroyed more than Carolina's name. You tried to bury a person who only wanted to help you, who served you, respected you, who never did anything against you. And you? She retorted, her voice trembling. You stayed silent that night. He sighed. A long sigh. Yes, and that's my fault. But today, I'm here to make amends, starting with the end of our relationship. I don't want to keep in touch anymore. Not even for appearances. Silence. My mother-in-law, in tears, handed me a check. She said it was the least she could do, a symbolic way of acknowledging the injustice. I refused. I didn't do it for the money. I did it for my dignity. She insisted, so I accepted. But I made it clear that my name was priceless, and that no one there should forget what happened, because it was precisely everyone's silence that gave Marcella strength. But there was still one last thing. At the end of the meeting, when everyone was leaving, I approached Marcella. I bent down until I was at eye level with her, who was trembling like a child caught in the act. Do you remember what you said to me that night? She swallowed hard. You said I wasn't part of the family, that I was an intruder. She didn't answer. Well, know this. It was the best thing you ever said to me, because thanks to that, I stopped wanting to belong to something that never had any value. I stood up and left, with my head held high. That night, I looked at my reflection in the mirror with a mixture of amazement and pride. The woman staring back at me was not the same woman who had started out. She had been torn apart, yes, but she rebuilt herself with something stronger than any family compliment or husband's approval, self-respect. And while Marcella dealt with the lawsuits, her dismissal from the office, her daughter's estrangement, and the silence of the people who had once flattered her, I found my way again. My own way. Made of truth, not appearances. Time has a very particular way of giving back what it takes away from us. And in Marcella's case, what started as a play to destroy me turned into a documentary of her own downfall. And the audience was real. In a few weeks, everything she had built on manipulation began to crumble, block by block, like a house of cards in an earthquake. The first piece to fall was the architecture firm where she worked. Officially, the statement said that Marcella had resigned for personal reasons, but everyone knew that behind it were allegations of fraudulent contracts. Clients had started showing up with lawyers, and the company decided to nip it in the bud, or rather, by the name. Soon after, the public reaction came. Every day, there was another post, another comment, another accusation from former clients or colleagues who now felt encouraged to speak out. With her image destroyed, she tried to explain herself in an amateur video on social media, but it only made things worse. There was no way to deny a surveillance video that showed second by second her own deception. With each new attempt to clear her name, Marcella sank deeper. Her daughter, who until then had defended her fervently, distanced herself. She cut off all contact. She told everyone she needed time and distance. The truth is that no one can see their own mother orchestrate the destruction of another innocent woman and continue to admire her in the same way. Eduardo, for his part, remained firm in his decision. He filed for divorce. He said that although he had not been directly involved in the scheme, his silence weighed heavily as complicity, and he didn't want to carry that burden anymore. Marcella, once so haughty, was now seen alone in markets, sunglasses on her face, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The woman who once set the tone for family gatherings, who made passive-aggressive comments with the confidence of someone who rules with an iron fist, now cowered before people's stares. But it wasn't just social. Justice also came knocking. Leticia, the maid who had helped me, agreed to testify in a slander and defamation lawsuit that I formally filed. With the help of a lawyer recommended by a school friend, we built a solid case, anchored in the evidence I had so carefully gathered. The video, the printouts, the statements, the suspicious contracts. It was a clean and unhurried process. I didn't want revenge on impulse. I wanted legal redress. During the hearing, Marcella tried to keep up appearances, but as soon as the video was played and the prosecution asked questions, she began to tremble. At one point, she lowered her eyes and muttered something that sounded almost like an apology. But it was too late. The judge ruled in my favor. She was ordered to compensate me financially and make a public retraction, and it couldn't be a hidden little note. It was read at the hearing and officially published on her professional channels. There, in that formal, forced paragraph, she admitted that she had lied, that she had accused me unjustly, that she had tried to harm me with a crime she herself had committed. And when those words came out of her mouth, in front of the judge, the lawyers, everyone, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not out of empty revenge, but out of justice. Finally, the local press even commented on the case. Small notes, without many details, but with suggestive headlines. Architect loses lawsuit after false accusation. Nothing sensational, but enough to stamp the truth in the city's memory. After that, Marcella disappeared from the social scene. She sold the apartment where she lived. Rumors said she was living with a distant aunt, trying to start a new life. The truth is, no one cared about her whereabouts anymore. And I went on with my life. I went back to my classes, with a new sparkle in my eyes. My students, unaware of anything, began to see me as more secure, more confident. I smiled differently, because now I knew what I was capable of. People began to respect me in a new way, not out of fear, but because they realized I was no longer the same. That behind the quiet woman was someone who knew how to fight and win with dignity. I started attending events on my own, not as someone's date. I was invited to speak at conferences on justice and truth. I used my story to inspire other women not to remain silent. And one day, when I got home, I received a letter. No sender. Handwritten. You won. I lost everything. I hope that one day you can forgive me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence was now mine. And it didn't hurt anymore. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night and find myself staring at the ceiling, remembering everything. That party, that accusation, Eduardo's silence, the shame, Marcella's look, and then the video, the turnaround, the fall, justice, and, as incredible as it may seem, I smile. Because I understood that pain, when channeled, can be fuel, and the truth, when held firmly, is a force that no one, no matter how influential, rich, or manipulative, can contain forever. I was no longer the same Carolina who entered that family afraid of not belonging. Today, I understand. Not belonging to something rotten is a blessing in disguise. Eduardo's family still keeps in touch with me. Yes, even after the divorce. My mother-in-law calls me sometimes, asking for advice or just to see how I am. My father-in-law sent a letter with a formal apology, written in his own hand. And Marcela's daughter? She sent me flowers with a shy note. Thank you for opening my eyes. Maybe one day we can have coffee. I haven't accepted yet, but I kept the note. Eduardo went his own way. We ran into each other a few times, and he always looks at me with a mixture of regret and admiration. There was never any hatred between us, just an irreparable rift, an absence at the most critical moment of my life. And that, you don't forget. Today, I have my own educational consulting firm. I started a small business that offers writing workshops for teenagers and women who have experienced emotional violence. I transform pain into text, and text into liberation. I speak at schools, participate in discussion groups, give interviews to small channels, and every time I tell my story, I see in the eyes of the women around me that same spark that once reignited in me, the spark of recovery, of a new beginning, because that's what it's all about. In the end, taking back what they tried to steal from us. I'm not just talking about the earring, or my reputation. I'm talking about my voice, the one they tried to silence with an absurd accusation, the one that got stuck in my throat when everyone looked at me with doubt, the one that, when it finally came out, was accompanied by evidence, strategy, and above all, respect for myself. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who no longer needs to be accepted, because she understands that she will never again accept being diminished. And Marcela? I don't know where she is. And honestly, I don't care. It's not because of her that I'm moving on. It's in spite of her. I close this chapter of my life with the certainty that my story is not only mine, it belongs to every woman who has been silenced, who was called a liar, an exaggerator, a problem, and who, even so, chose not to bow down. Because sometimes, the video may show the truth, but it is the silence that comes after courage that transforms everything. And I, finally, have transformed myself.